Hey everyone, and welcome to Crystal Lake Public Library's November edition of Adult Storytime, Storytime for Adults. I'm your host, Katie from Adult Services, and this month, November, we are going to be doing something special with Adult Storytime, and that is celebrating National Native American Heritage Month. So I'd like to talk a little bit, just quickly, about what is National Native American Heritage Month. This definition here was taken from the National Congress of American Indians, NCAI, and that's at ncai.org. November is Native American Heritage Month, or as it is commonly referred to, American Indian and Alaska Native Heritage Month. This month is a time to celebrate rich and diverse cultures, traditions, and histories, and to acknowledge the important contributions of Native people. Heritage Month is also an opportune time to educate the general public about tribes, to raise a general awareness about the unique challenges Native people have faced both historically and in the present, and the ways in which tribal citizens have worked to conquer these challenges. So that's just a brief overview of Native American Heritage Month. And one important part of Native American heritage is indigenous land acknowledgement. And that's something that we can do as non-natives to understand where the land we live on, came from, who it belonged to, and who it belongs to. And so I wanted to just go over a little bit from the Native Governance Center, nativegov.org, tips for creating an Indigenous land acknowledgement statement. Now, this is something that a lot of organizations would do, but there's no reason why you as an individual or family couldn't do the same research and background for yourselves, for your own education. So here's what they suggest. Start with self-reflection. Before starting work on your land acknowledgement statement, reflect on the process. Why am I doing this land acknowledgement? What is my end goal? When will I have the largest impact? And put time necessary to research the following topics. So research the indigenous people to whom the land belongs, the history of the land and any relative treaties, names of living indigenous people from these communities, indigenous place names and language, and the correct pronunciation for the names of the tribes, places, and individuals that you're including. Use appropriate language. Don't sugarcoat the past. Use terms like genocide, ethnic cleansing, stolen land, and forced removal to reflect actions taken by colonizers. Use past, present, and future tenses. Indigenous people are still here and they're thriving. Don't treat them as a relic of the past. Land acknowledgements shouldn't be grim. They should function as living celebrations of Indigenous communities. Ask yourself, how am I leaving Indigenous people in a stronger, more empowered place because of this land acknowledgement? Focus on the positivity of who Indigenous people are today. They also say, encourage you to take action. So they say land acknowledgement alone is not enough. It's merely a starting point. Ask yourself, how do I plan to take action to support Indigenous communities? And they also say, at the end of the day, remember, starting somewhere is better than not trying at all. We need to share in Indigenous people's discomfort. They've been uncomfortable for a long time. So with that in mind, I wanted to talk about Crystal Lake itself and the land that the Crystal Lake Public Library is on. There's this very cool website called native-land.ca. And what they do is try and create and foster conversations about the history of colonialism, Indigenous ways of knowing, and settler-Indigenous relations through educational resources. And their main resource is a beautiful map that they have created for you to type in your address as far down as your own home address to see what native lands you might live on. And so I did a little research, okay? And went into native-land.ca and looked up Crystal Lake. Now, if you can see here on this chart, it's a tinge blurry, but you can see there, right on Paddock Street, the Crystal Lake Public Library. And you might see that in this particular area, we have Kickapoo, or Kickapoo, as you may have commonly heard. Now, there also, because the way that the territories were spread around, it's not just Kickapoo land, but it also is the land of Peoria, Ocheti Snakowin, Ocheti Shakowin, Miyamia, and Potawatomi. Lands intersected on these maps. Okay, so what is the importance of land when we're talking about these land maps? And native-land.ca says, land is something sacred to all of us, whether we consciously appreciate it or not. It is the space upon which we play, live, eat, find love, and experience life. The land is ever-changing and ever-shifting, giving us and other creatures and beings on the earth an infinite number of gifts and lessons. The Native Land Digital creates spaces where non-Indigenous people can be invited and challenged to learn more about the lands they inhabit, the history of those lands, and how to actively be part of a better future going forward. So, the land itself is sacred. It is not easy to draw lines that divide it up into chunks that delineate who owns different parts of land. In reality, we know that the land is not something to be exploited and owned, but something to be honored and treasured. However, because of the complexities of history, the kind of mapping we undertake is an important exercise, insofar as it brings an awareness of the real lived history of Indigenous peoples and nations in a long era of colonialism. And so that's why it's really important that we visit native-land.ca, which is a living document and is always being updated and revised, and take a look at our own communities and see which territories and land we are currently living on. And that is just a super brief overview of National Native American Heritage Month and land recognition that I wanted to share with you. I thought that'd be a great way to start the month. Now, for some more in-depth reading, I'd love to recommend you this book, An Indigenous People's History of the United States for Young People. Now, author Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz originally wrote this book as more of an adult resource. So there is a full version, or a more in-depth version, just called An Indigenous People's History of the United States. And that's available as well. But this is a really great resource to start. It really fits all ages. And right from the very beginning of it, shows you things about land in the United States that maybe you didn't know. And we're going to go into a little bit more of that later. But for some history for the month, I thought this might be a great place for you to start. Check out our digital resources as well as hard copies at the library or your library. Now, the rest of this month, for each story time, I'm going to read from a different author. Some are nonfiction perspectives, some are humorous essays, some are beautiful short stories. And it's just a very small sampling of the amazing wealth of Indigenous authors that we have at our fingertips. And we may not even know about, but we should. And so, for tonight's reading, I wanted to bring you the hilarious, biting, and satirical writings of Tiffany Midge. I will be reading from her book, Bury My Heart at Chuck E. Cheese's. A little bit about Tiffany. She is a citizen of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, and she was raised in the Pacific Northwest. And she's been compared to David Sedaris or a native Anne Lamott. So her humorous writings, but from the perspective of a native woman, are she's a singular voice. So I would love to read from you now from her essay Feast, Smudge, Snag, which takes her humorous look at popular written works and what if they had an indigenous twist. And here's her satirical take on that, so I hope you enjoy. Feast, Smudge, Snag by Tiffany Midge. 1. Feast, Smudge, Snag. You've read the book, Eat, Pray, Love, and you've seen the movie starring Julia Roberts. Well, hold on to your fry bread because here's the Lakota version, Feast, Smudge, Snag. Synopsis. In her early 30s, Colleen Campbell had everything a modern indigenous woman could hope for. 4 great kids, a condo, a successful Etsy shop. But instead of feeling fulfilled, she was overcome by anxieties and confusion. This wise and transformative book is the story of how she overcame her worries and set out to reclaim the traditional aspects of her culture and renew a sense of balance back into her life. Not by visiting India, Italy, or Bali, but by burning some sweetgrass and looking right in her own backyard. How Sacagawea got her groove back. Go west, they said. It'll be fine, they said. Little did our iconic heroine know she'd be stuck for months on end, forging a trail with 30 unruly laborers and a baby strapped to her back. Little did she realize that after enduring illness, flash floods, temperature extremes, food shortages, and mosquito swarms, all she'd receive in compensation was a commemorative coin just shy of 200 years too late. What's an Indian guide to do? Go to Jamaica, man, sip mimosas on the beach, and indulge in an island fling with a much younger man. Bead by Bead. In 1995, the how-to instructional manual for writers, Bird by Bird, made its stunning debut. But have you ever heard of the indigenous version, Bead by Bead? As any good bead artist knows, when crafting earrings, a belt buckle, or a bolo tie, you just gotta be patient and take it bead by bead. Bead by Bead, Instructions for Indigenous Writing, applies the same principles of the craft of beading to the craft of writing. Whether you're writing the great American Indian novel, a blog post, or just a postcard, you're only going to achieve the end result by keeping your focus on the small details and taking it one bead or one word at a time. The Casinos of Madison County. For anyone who has ever experienced the heartache of the snag who got away, The Casinos of Madison County is the book for you. Synopsis. It's lonely on the plains, and housewife and mother Fran Lone Elk's marriage has grown stale and humdrum over the years. Enter the tall, dark, and handsome National Geographic photographer who by chance stops by her isolated HUD house, lost and looking for directions to the casino. With Fran's husband and children away, Fran climbs into the mysterious photographer's truck and directs him to the casino, and then the next casino, and the next. And over the next 4 days, because 4 is a sacred number, Fran's loneliness transforms into a mad, passionate love affair with slot machines. The Color Turquoise. Alice Walker's The Color Purple, winner of the 1983 Pulitzer Prize, captured many a reader's heart throughout the world. Here's the indigenous version we'd like to see, called The Color Turquoise. Meet our heroine, a girl named Turquoise, a woebegone woman who, with grit and determination, overcomes her heartbreaking circumstances with a little help from her sisters and friends. Not everyone is lucky enough to have a champion jingle dress dancer, Sugar everybody talks about, as a BFF, but there's some special kind of chemistry that happens whenever the two girls get together. Can this be the key to unlocking Turquoise's dreams? A Confederacy of Dunces with Wolves. while bearing striking similarities to the cult classic novel A Confederacy of Dunces, written by John Kennedy Toole, published posthumously and winning a Pulitzer Prize. A Confederacy of Dunces with Wolves, however, did not receive the same literary success. Some critics pointed out that had A Confederacy of Dunces with Wolves used New Orleans as its setting instead of the plains of Nebraska, it might have been a bestseller, or at the very least, made into an Academy Award-winning film. Harry Potahontas. Harry Potahontas is a delightful series of chapter books about a magical Native American boy who rides buffalo and talks to unicorns. Perhaps you've heard of it? If not, then you certainly heard of its doppelganger series, Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. The central takeaway, being that so many white people believe Indians practice magic, you'd think they'd try and be nicer to us. Are you there, Tunkasila? It's me, Margaret Looks Back. Growing up can be a hard road, and with so many bodily changes happening, life can sometimes feel overwhelming and even scary. Are you there, Tunkasila? It's me, Margaret Looks Back, helps to negotiate those trails toward womanhood and will provide solace for any young girl who might feel alone and is looking for her path. Tiospaye. Of course, a young native girl can always look for guidance within her Tiospaye, but it's comforting to know that a good book is always within reach. So again, that was from Tiffany Midge's Bury My Heart at Chuck E. Cheese's. As you can see, Tiffany does not hold back. She tells it like she means it. So if you're interested in more of her work, definitely check this book out. She is quite a voice and very funny. Well worth the read. Thank you so much for joining me tonight for that reading from Tiffany Midge's book. I hope that you got as much out of what we learned tonight as I did, especially in learning about land acknowledgement and learning about the land that you yourself live on right now. Again, if you want to look at that land map and learn more about the land that you currently live on or visit, you should go to native-land.ca and take a look for yourself. You'll find out a lot that you didn't know, I bet you didn't know, in just a few short minutes. So I hope you'll join me for the next story time, and I look forward to learning more with you as the month goes on. So happy National Native American Heritage Month, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Please stay healthy and stay safe, and we will see you soon. Bye.